All right, welcome. We are so excited to be here today and ultimately just share the heart of two women who have come aligned in only connection through podcasting world, which I think is so cool. Usually when I bring people on, I'm like, oh, we're connected this way. And so this is so fun for me because there's going to be so many elements to the conversation that'll be a surprise for me, just like it'll be a surprise for our guests. But I am grateful that you also had me recording on your podcast, which is a part of your bio, part of your intro. You guys, this is Jessica Lorion. And I love when I asked her, how do I say your last name? She said, just like DeLorean. And so I will not forget the DeLorean. We also have a local band for your best friend who lives in Virginia Beach, the DeLoreans, that she might be familiar with. They're incredible. But yeah, so Jessica has a rap sheet that will wow you, and everything from film to TV to stage and theater acting. She lives in the Big Apple, which is surely a part of her heartbeat and a part of her dreams, and to be living it out now is so cool. So we'll dive into that space. She's also the host of the Pumping podcast, which we'll talk about, and I had the honor of being on. So there's so many cool things about that and what she's doing for the world and the impact that she's creating. And she's a teacher, encourager, and inspirer of next generation of artists, which is right up my alley because I think the next generation is just such a space of need at this time. And so to do so around art and the beautiful things that you're working on, I just think is so good. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure. I'm so honored. And I already had so much fun chatting with you for my podcast. And so I'm just really grateful to be here and to connect with your audience as well.
Agreed. So tell us, I kind of did a little mini bio. Tell us more about you. Where are you tuning in from? And yeah, your story of how you got where you're at today.
Oh my gosh.
I know it's a big one.
I'm originally from Massachusetts. I am an only child. I grew up, it's crazy. Recently watched this documentary, and it was kind of talking about your past and how that molds you for your future. I grew up in a split family, but loved by two wonderful people. My mom then went on to get remarried, so then I gained a second father. And it's been a really beautiful journey to see how they've all supported me throughout my life and my transition. I pretty much packed my bags. It's funny, when I graduated college, my mom and my stepdad said to me, which I'm so grateful for, so Jess, for graduation, we were thinking, we've been saving up some money. Maybe we should go on a trip to Italy.
Ooh.
I said, no, I think I want to move to New York. Idiot.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, that's so right. You probably would have lived in Italy.
Oh my God. I mean, I guess I was just thinking at the time, I can always go to Europe.
Yeah.
Haven't been back yet, but I just had this dream and this goal to, be in New York City in the Big Apple. I remember when I was in high school, I would go on these little weekend trips. They'd jam pack, you'd leave at like 5:30 in the morning and you wouldn't get back till 12:30 at night, and you would drive in and you would see a show, and sometimes you'd see two shows and dinner and walk all around the city. And I remember being in Times Square and walking around and just really feeling like this is where I want to be. This felt like home, the energy, the pulse of the city. And then it's kind of crazy because now 12 years later, sometimes I walk around and I'm like, get me out of here. But no, there's something, it's a city that you love and you hate.
Yeah.
I have a friend who recently started a company. It's called I Tolerate New York. And it's true, but the tolerate isn't a heart, because you truly do, there's so much about the city that you love. And so, yeah, I'm joining you from the city. I moved here to pursue acting. Started off in theater. Now I've been moving a little bit more into TV and film.
Cool.
Had this desire to reach out more and start my podcast, and it's just been a really incredible journey. But I would say, moving to the city has been transformative. Even for theater, I would go away for a few months and live in another state for 3 months at a time, 4 months at a time.
Wow.
And that was always an amazing adventure. But, around 2-3 weeks when I'm looking for food at 10:30 at night, or I'm looking to have some interaction at a coffee shop that's busy and bustling. It's a catch-22.
Right.
You're always going to want what you don't have. But I think ultimately I'm so grateful to be here. I can't imagine myself anywhere else, and it's truly made me, I think, who I am. So
that's so amazing. So how old were you when you actually moved there?
It was right out of college.
Okay.
So 21, I guess.
Okay. Wow. So young. Now, did you know anyone there?
No. I mean,
wow.
I literally, it sounds so, like a book, but I literally packed 2 suitcases. My mom brought me to the bus station, and I'll never forget her face when she was in the car, and I walked away. She's just sobbing. I remember I called her later on and talked to her, and she said, well, I sat in my car for about an hour and sobbed, and then I called my sister, and I decided to go shopping, and I bought some shoes.
Retail therapy.
But yeah, I mean, I had this mission. So, through a family friend, I stayed in an apartment for 2 weeks, rent-free, which was just amazing.
Yeah.
Just get started and get my footing.
Yeah.
I got a job a week later at a restaurant. I just took one day and went out to all these different restaurants and tried to get a job. But no, I didn't know anybody. I had some friends from college, acquaintances. If I needed to connect to them, I would, but nobody really that I was, going to be meeting routinely.
Wow. So talk us through the journey of being an artist, being an actor, an actress, if you will. Were you because I have kids of my own, and one who really wants to take the stage right now, but I'm not sure. She's definitely not musically talented. And so I'm like, are you going to act? And then there's another one who is incredibly vivacious and is made for a stage, but hates to be on stage. So he only likes it when it's people that he loves and he knows. But if he ever goes up on stage for a performance at school, freezes, won't make eye contact.
What about
the other one that my daughter,
live or anything?
What'd you say?
What about filming or live or anything?
So we took him to an audition.
Maybe he'd be okay in front of a camera.
He is good in front of a camera. He actually has made his own YouTube videos, and he's comment or below. I'm like, what? You're 5. Where did you even hear that? Oh, he's definitely a ham. So that's a good perspective. I didn't think about that. It's not the audience. That would be theater versus.
Right.
Okay. So talk us about your experience.
First of all, as far as kids go, and for any mothers out there, whether your children are going to dive and have a career in the arts, whatever the arts is, acting, singing, dancing, artistic, anything, no matter what, I think it's so important for the development of children. I think number one, it's the most important for your confidence. And it's the most important to really get connected to your emotions and something that's like higher than us. The music and like dance. We talked about this on my podcast, connecting to dance. All those aspects, I think, benefit children, you know, even who are going to go into the corporate world. You know, they then are able to speak in front of a crowd of people, or they're able to think creatively in a different way. So I wouldn't necessarily shy away if you're a mom out there or a dad and you're ever wanting your kids to be connected to that. I think that's amazing. For me, it was kind of always in my blood. Both of my parents were singers. My mom was the head of a music department. She was a choir director. She just retired a few years ago after 42 years of teaching.
Wow.
My first musical I ever did was actually to be in one of her musicals. It was always with just high school kids, but she threw me in there.
That's awesome.
And I had a blast. Plus, I thought it was super cool that I was hanging out with like high school kids.
Of course.
And my dad, he was a singer. He also played trumpet. I was exposed to all of that stuff at a very young age. Yeah. So I think it just kind of became part of me. And then I'll never forget, I went to this summer program where we had to pick a major and a minor. And you could pick it, whatever arts, major and minor you wanted. So I majored in dance and minored in theater.
Yeah.
And I had this Little Mermaid song that I did during the performance. Yeah. And I'll never forget my mom's reaction after that was just one of like such support and love and encouragement. And it just kind of sparked something inside of me. And so I went and I studied it at Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. And then, you know, it's kind of interesting. I was on tour for 2 years with the National Tour of Beauty and the Beast, and walking out onto that stage every night. I mean, it's a feeling that you can't describe, which is also, to explain it, is like totally different than TV and film and commercial, which is why I mentioned that for your son. Because like, you know, I performed at one theater. There were 6,000 people in that theater. It was sold out. There were 6,000 seats. It was in Indiana. And it's like that energy, it's just palpable, you know?
So good.
And it's, you have to be on your toes. And after you do a show like 300 times, there's something that's sort of just in you. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But there's also that moment sometimes where you're like, I could not say my next line and everybody in this audience would just be like, you know, on the edge of their seat.
Yeah, it's good.
There's that whole thing. But then with TV and film, it's a whole nother ball game. Yeah. And it's really stripping all of that away and getting back to who you are and being grounded and quiet, which is a weird thing for especially theater actors to like channel. But I don't know, it's been, I personally can't imagine doing anything else. And when I remember when I was auditioning at colleges, I met this professor at Ithaca. She kind of scared me. But there was an element that was true in what she said. She looked at me and she said, if you can picture yourself doing anything else but theater, don't do theater.
Wow.
And I was like, you're right. Because I think it's that level of like, you have to eat, sleep, and breathe acting and the arts if you're going to pursue it as a career, because there are so many hurdles.
Interestingly, as you're talking about this, I have obviously a plethora of type of people that come onto the podcast, but was it yesterday? My days mixed together. It was I think it was Tuesday. I had somebody that I have to get you in touch with. His name is Joel Casanova, and he has Beat Hunter Dance Studio, and it's all about the exploring identity through faith, through dance. And he's incredible. He went to Regent University here and has developed this studio, both virtual lessons, in person, and he has this entire global mission. So to have like two artists on the same week, I think that's so neat. Artists in the realm of stage performing, and everyone I believe is born an artist. doesn't matter what that looks like. Our expression of God himself, I believe, is done in the form of art. That's how he created the heavens and the earth. It's how he created us. Yeah. And so when you talked about it being like in your DNA, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But to now hear like the generational influence, obviously, of your parents, I think that plays such a big role. And I also find it interesting as a mom, and I want to speak to your pumping podcast here in a second to transition, but as a mom, thinking about those little moments that can become huge moments. And your mom was just being loving, right? She was just like affirming you. It was also part of her passion, so she was probably like really thrilled that you were good at it. Right. There's also just the point of just like, wow, she's enamored by you. She loves you, as I hope every mom does towards their kiddos. And then that was so ingrained in you as an affirmation point that you were like, okay, I want to keep earning her love. And so it's a necessary thing for us as moms to be super mindful of those times, because there have surely been moments where I've said things that I wish I could take back, or in a heat of a moment, or there's also the times where I'm constantly affirming my children and I'm wondering, is this the place that God would have me affirm them? Because what if my affirming them so much in this space isn't what they're meant to do? Is it going to contradict them later in life, or is it going to propel them into the space of purpose? I don't know. So I think it's important for us as moms to be tuned in to all of their gifts and not just see maybe the one that's shiny or there in the forefront all the time.
Well, exactly. I think I was going to say something similar to that, in that as long as you're affirming the multiple things that they do, so when they make that really amazing math calculation, or get that really amazing test, or write that really amazing paper, or paint that really beautiful painting, or sing that really beautiful song, it's like they're all equally affirmed.
Yeah.
So whatever speaks to them, which for me, it was performing, I might have written a really good paper, which I did it multiple times, but like I didn't get that desire to be a writer, or journalist or anything like that. So I think as long as you equally affirm,
that's
not overly,
of course,
where it's appropriate,
yes.
But I think they'll kind of find it themselves.
That's really cool. So I want to share with the audience, because it just blows my mind, because I didn't know that part about your story. She has the Pumping Podcast, and it's a place where women can gather. Obviously, if you're a mom, you know exactly what's happening. And yet at the same time, you could be nursing. You could be in the stage of life where I am, where my kiddos are older, and I'm not thinking about that at all. Thank goodness. My boobies are mine and my husband's, but mine. And I get to just, resonate with the motherhood journey. So thinking for sure, I can't wait to find out about her little kids. And she shares, actually, I'm not a mom yet. I have a heart of a mother. I think most women do. Share with me like the moment that you decided this is a passion project that I want to take on, and how that has been an evolution since you started.
I get that so many times, or people will kind of assume naturally, and they'll be like, oh, can't wait to hear about your kids. And I'm like, haha, you're going to have to wait a few years. But
so cool.
Yeah, I want to also explain to everybody that we do not just talk about pumping or even breastfeeding at all.
Yeah, we did it.
And at first, when I was creating it, my mom specifically said, like, well, maybe you should consider the name a little bit. But the name specifically is because the original intention came for moms who are currently pumping or breastfeeding to listen to something so that they don't feel so alone during those isolating times. But I mean, I have moms like yourself who have kids who are older. You're allowed to watch. I mean, you're allowed to listen anytime you want, whether you're driving or doing dishes or working out or whatever. But it really came for me. As we were talking about with acting has highs and lows, and it has periods where, you're searching for a sense of creativity. And so I was in one of those places, and I was looking for something creative, looking for something that I could control, because oftentimes with the acting career too, it feels like you only have so much control. Sure. And all of my friends were starting to have kids, and I was inundated in the best way by it. And I was babysitting too. And so I was holding a baby. It really came about. I was babysitting this little girl like March, April, May, almost every day in succession, holding this little 6-month-old. And it just felt so dang good. But I was just already around all of this conversation. And I was talking to one of my best friends who had just had a baby, and she was telling me about how she feels or felt very isolated and lonely when she was pumping or breastfeeding. She gave me the story of how she would go to her in-laws and, her father-in-law didn't love having her boob out while she was breastfeeding. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
But she had to go to the second bedroom to pump while everybody else, or breastfeed while everybody else was having a grand old time. I then happened to, in like the same week, stumble across another friend who was going to a bachelorette, and all the bachelorette ladies were going into the winery, and she had to sit in the car and pump. And I just thought, like, this is not fair. And it's something amazing that we're doing for our babies, but we should be able to be comforted in some way. And so I just thought, well, what if I can learn more about motherhood before I dive into it and serve other moms? And so it's been so rewarding, not only for my education, but in connecting moms. And like, I'm always just brainstorming, how can I build this community even more and more? I'm still praying on that, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what comes of that. But
I already have some ideas for you. My entrepreneurial brain is like, ooh, let's do it.
Exactly.
So we will go there.
It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, so amazing. And so you had told me when you were explaining it before, and I thought it was so profound, is like, when we go into something new, we often don't just like jump blindsided into it, and we prepare for it, and we might educate ourselves in some regard or have conversations about it. And though as becoming a mother, you have that time frame during pregnancy where you can read the books and get all the new stuff, what happens before that is often just this yearning to be a mom and no education, just the education maybe around like, how do I make this work? Like, what temperature am I at? What time is it? Maybe the cycle component of having a baby. But beyond that, like, you're just like, I'm going to be a mom. This is what happens. The baby comes out and now I'm a mom. But there's so much more to it than that. And of course,
you can read the books, I think. You can read what to expect. Yeah. You can read Breastfeeding 101. You can even go to the classes. But I think it's different to hear it from the lips of a mom who's been there. And, we touch on so many different topics. We touch on infertility. We touch on foster care. We touch on adoption. We touch on postpartum. It's like so many things. And so I think it's a different sense of education,
Yeah, it's really neat.
And the other cool thing about it for me too is like, I get to kind of like hang with the moms too, like when I'm not a mom, because as your friends start to become moms, but you're not one, like you feel a little bit like an outsider.
It's so true.
But now like I can speak to it because it's not personal, but I can say, oh, I had a guest who went through XYZ. Oh, I know what that term is,
That's so cool.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think I was like among one of the first in my friend group to have kids. And so it's funny that you feel that way with the opposite, because I felt that way as a mom. I was like, oh my gosh, my entire phone is not calling me. I have no friends. Friday nights don't look the same. Saturday days don't look the same. And I felt really isolated in the fact that they were all out partying and going in, still, living their 20s lifestyle. And I was at home nursing a baby. And that was a part of my, I think, demise, if you will, circa coming back into being a CEO and really running gung-ho into a lifestyle that wasn't my own. And I think often that can happen as a mom, is you are so desperate for identity because it's often lost in that space that you can seek out the wrong sense of identity. And so I think it's amazing that you are exploring that now, so that as you come into becoming a mom, you have that know-how and that knowledge, and can even, like you said before, strip yourself of things like mom guilt before even understanding what mom guilt feels like.
Right.
It's such a...
Yeah. And I mean, of course, you never know till you're in it, and it's kind of fun because I get to have different conversations with my husband about these things too. And I'm sure there's going to be multiple things that don't look the way that, I expect them to be, but at least there's some sort of anticipation.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's kind of switch gears and go back into the realm of theater and more along the heartbeat of your desire to like teach, educate, and inspire this next generation of artists. How do you hope to do that? How do you feel like you've already done that? What's your vision?
Yeah, it's about 2 years ago now, which is crazy. I feel like it was just last year, but about 2 years ago, I started coaching kids, and I created a master class that I did back at my hometown in Massachusetts. And it was something that was just kind of fell upon me. I thought, I feel like I want to give back. I had been in acting class and learning so much valuable information that I thought I would love to have known when I was a child. And so I thought, what if I kind of create something? And I did that, and it gave me so much more than I ever even anticipated. And they were so, I don't know. It's hard to describe. I've never necessarily wanted, my mom was an educator for years, and I remember she would always be like, you're not going to be a teacher. But this is kind of a different realm,
Yeah.
I don't really have a desire to be in a school every single day or as a professor or anything, but encouraging kids' passions that they already have, giving them a taste of what it's like here in New York City, it really lit me up. It was really fun. And so I've continued here and there online pretty much because I'm in New York. So we would meet online, but I would coach kids, through these techniques that we learn. And I think even I learned as far as acting goes a little too late. Like, I feel like the things that I learned now, I feel like I wish I learned in college. And they're very basic things, kind of getting down to like the soul of who you are and that authenticity. And it's not necessarily this like showy, which is great to an essence, and works for certain things. But kids can also be so vulnerable and so real. So that's been really amazing to work with them. And then I actually have a program that is starting July 6th. I launched a 4-week class online for kids, 10 to 21, excuse me. And we're going to be talking all about self-taping and auditioning from home.
Cool.
Because if you don't know the way of the world right now, especially for, acting and performing, we don't really know, especially when theater is going to be back. TV and film and commercial are slowly starting to gain some footing. But, when you usually audition for something, you have to go in for the audition. And now I think whether we're back to a normal or not, they're going to be saving on studio prices. They're going to be saving on, all of this time, and they're just going to say, tape at home. And so now we have all of these other skills that we have to learn for our career, which is like, oh, great, one more thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is something that I've been doing for a while now, and that I have direct access to casting directors and people to tell me how to do it that these kids might not have.
That's so cool.
I'm really excited. It's going to be 4 Mondays in a row starting July 6th. And we're just going to get on Zoom and chat. And I have a whole thing to take them through, but it's just rewarding. It's so rewarding.
And I love that you're going to do it live. I was thinking, are you at some point going to put it into something that's evergreen that people can do all the time, or do you really think that like one-on-one is critical?
I think it's something that I could consider. But I think especially with kids, kids are less likely to want to really read and dive in.
That's so true.
And
attention spans are different.
And I think, as adults, it's like, if this is something we want to do, we'll do the research. But with kids, I think there's something to be said for seeing it. And it was even interesting because when I did my master class, a lot of the feedback I was getting from them was seeing other kids' work.
That's really cool.
yeah, this was in person, but they were like, I learned so much more even just watching the other people in the class and seeing them sort of transform with these small little details.
That's great.
So I think it's an option I could consider for the future for sure. But I think especially for kids,
that makes total sense. I hadn't thought about that component of it. I'm also wondering because, I mean, it's really any art. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the theater or acting component, because I'm thinking of like my niece, for instance, who's an incredible guitarist. Same thing for her. Like if that's a part of the video piece and presenting, and it could be more than that. Just as a different like target audience, because they need to learn those things as well.
And it's some basic things, but we just don't think about them. You know, like for example, the background that you have right now is stunning, and I love chatting with you and seeing what I see, but for an audition setting it would be too distracting.
Right.
You know, because then we might be looking at the picture behind you instead of your face. So
cool.
It's little things like that.
That's really cool. Well, I'm so excited for you to get on that adventure. I think it's really going to make a huge impact, even for the receiving end of the studios who are receiving it. They're going to be like, whoa, what? These kids have like a one-up, essentially, because they're going to have those things taken care of. So what a cool like competitive edge for them as a budding artist, if you will.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I don't know, there's something about kids too. It just... I don't know. It feels so good to work with them, and it's so rewarding.
That's so beautiful. So tell me about what's next for Jessica. Like, you have this going on. This is actually next, but it's really soon and happening now. Like, when you vision cast for yourself 3, 5, 10 years from now, are you in New York City? What does that look like?
I think it's here. My husband and I always go back and forth. Like, should we just move to LA? You know, we're both more TV film focused at the moment. But our family is close in Massachusetts, so it's hard. I don't know. But I think New York for now. Honestly, in the next like 2-3 years, first of all, I would love to get out of I call it my job. So my normal, regular income, because once again, as an actor, like you need something to supplement. And so I would like to move away from that and more focusing on myself and the podcast and just acting. And then I'd like to try to start a family. Part of the whole reason why I haven't become a mom yet and started that whole journey is because I'm working on getting off some medication that I'm on from a diagnosis that I got. And so if I couldn't even have kids right now if I wanted to. And so I've really spent since January of this past year was really like the starting line of really kind of focusing on my health and changing my diet and really, like, I've always been a fit person, but really focusing on that and putting myself first. And so I would like to really take the next year and try to get off of the medication that I'm on to try to start that journey. But it's an interesting question when you ask it, because while that's kind of one of my next goals and things I want to focus on, I also want all of these other, business passion, sides of me to really thrive along the same line. And it'll be interesting to see how that molds together. But I
love that. I think that's really cool. And like, honestly, the next segue of I talk a lot, and the premise of the Fit and Faith podcast when it first started, beyond the entrepreneurial side of things, was this mind, body, and soul journey that we're all on. And it looks different for every single person. And you've told us a lot about like your mental and your like being growth as you emerged into being who you are today. But tell us more about like that journey in a health perspective, whether it be the mental health piece of having 2 homes or the health piece of this diagnosis that you're telling us about. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's interesting because especially in New York, but for many people, it's nonstop and it's go, go, go. And you have all of these things that you're focusing on. And so to be honest, when COVID-19 hit and we were required to stay in our homes, it it was almost a blessing for me to stop and slow down. And so the mental part of it really has just kind of blossomed. I mean, I've started practicing meditation where I always would want to dabble in that, but I never really did. And so it's been really kind of a nice time for me to get back to calming myself and to take 30 minutes and read, or go to the park and just stare at the water for a little bit, or, you know, whatever those sort of mental components are. So really that's kind of come recently with the wake of everything that our world's been going through. And then basically, I'll try to make a super long story short, but as far as the physical side of things go, up until the time I was 25, I was, healthy as can be. I never had acne in high school or any time.
Oh, gosh, I wish I had that.
Oh my gosh, I had like the best skin.
Yeah.
Always got compliments on my face for my skin. Ate pretty well. Like didn't have a ton of junk food, but like average. And then I started to develop these spots on my body. I had one of my best friends staying with me in New York at the time, sleeping in my bed. And so at first I thought it was bed bugs, but then she didn't have any bites on her. So I was like, well, it can't be bed bugs, thank God.
Yeah.
But anyway, I ended up getting diagnosed with psoriasis. And it was an interesting time because I got diagnosed, and then it was maybe about 3 months later or so is when I got my offer to go on the national tour of Beauty and the Beast. So I had something so stressful starting, but then something so victorious starting at the same time. And it continued to go that way in that parallel for 2 years. So by the end of a year, I was completely covered head to toe.
Wow.
Like you wouldn't even recognize me.
Wow.
Luckily, my face remained fine, except like I had a couple spots here and here, but my scalp, my entire body, just covered. And I was continuing to perform, and it was really hard because I remember we'd get to a new city, and the costume people that would always help you, they would not mean anything by it, but they would make comments or say, oh, did you get bit by mosquitoes or whatever. And it was hard to kind of
deal with that,
mentally navigate that.
Yeah.
I tried a bunch of different diets. I went on this like green apple diet where I just ate green apples for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
The things we do for
Right. I tried all these things. I did end up going gluten-free, and the blessing about that, it was challenging being on the road, but I had such an amazing group of people in my cast, and they would constantly come up to me like, oh, I found a gluten-free treat. I got this for you at the store. And they were my everything. I went on a biologic medication, Humira, and my skin started to clear up here and there. But literally a year to the day after I started, I developed some pain. I had to call out of the show, which I hadn't done in the whole year and a half. I had never called out of a show, but I had to call out of a show because I just couldn't walk. And it got so bad. My husband came to visit me when we were in LA, and I literally couldn't walk to the bathroom. He had to carry me to the bathroom. I also developed vasculitis. So basically I got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis and vasculitis. My ankles got huge and swollen. They were all these spots on I felt like a monster, truly.
Yeah, wow.
And I ended up getting off of the Humira, going on to methotrexate, which is a really strong, they use it for cancer patients, but many other autoimmune diseases, and also another medication called Dapsone. And so now I was placed with this autoimmune disease that I was trying to figure out how to navigate. And so pretty much where I'm at now is I'm only on the Dapsone and the methotrexate, but I'm trying to wean off of the methotrexate. My skin is great.
Yeah, you look amazing. You would never know.
Yeah. No, I have a couple little spots on my elbows, a little bit here. But for the most part, the other day I actually had to do a commercial audition for psoriasis.
Oh, wow.
And I just had to sit there and talk about my experience.
Yeah.
And I went back and looked at some of the pictures that I had, and I just got so emotional because I couldn't, going back to how I felt during that time was just like, oh my gosh. So now I've been trying to I started in January, Dr. Amy Meyer's autoimmune solution. I took on her autoimmune diet, which I really like to just call a way of life now. I've started to implement some other things that I didn't really see much of an effect on my body, but I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, basically, besides like coconut sugar. I really only have some basic oils: olive oil, sesame oil, avocado oil. And this is just my new normal.
Yeah.
And it was something that was so scary. And, to think of giving up certain things or transitioning is really hard. But once you have a certain why, and my why has been, to start a family, it's going to grab that piece of bread or have that pasta or grab that, candy. I just have been picturing that moment of being a mom, and it's just like,
wow.
It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier,
right.
So,
right. I love
so
that
anyway,
saying.
That was probably way longer than you anticipated.
No,
but
I think it's amazing. I think it's so critical to share in like a part of your, teacher ability, your education ability, all parts of us, every part of our storyline has purpose in where God has us intended to go. And you might not even know that commercial has a ripple effect in somebody else's life that then can transform the way that they have now, became a mom. And so to know that that's a part of your storyline and know that you're purposed in sharing it, I'm grateful that you spent the time to do so, and hopeful that all of the things that you have implemented, even the things like meditation that can play such a role in your ability to quiet your spirit and quiet your cells and your neurons and everything. There's so much more depth to that than what I think people, even Christians, give it credit for. And we're called to rest. And there's a lot of value in that. So I'm hopeful, just like it was for you, that people during this time of quarantine were able to find a sense of rest, even when it was forced.
Yeah, and I'd really encourage, if there's anybody out there with any sort of an autoimmune disease, or even if it's not diagnosed, but you're getting like chronic headaches or chronic stomach pains, or, something that it should not be normal for the normal human being. I recently watched a documentary called Heal.
Oh, it's good.
Oh,
it's so good. Yes. So I watched it years ago.
Out there, it's like, oh, it was so, and it really encouraged me. Like, if you take the power of your mind and the negativity, and take the power of the positivity, like, you can totally transform. And I think that whether that's God for you or whether that's an energy for you, like whatever that is for you, I believe in it. I so believe in it. And there are people, there's facts, there's reality that like people have healed themselves.
Yes,
so
yes.
I really encourage you.
So
to
powerful.
look at that.
And that's that component of mental health, not to give it its own tagline or anything like that, but that there is so much power in the placement of focusing there, and almost focusing there first, because that's the connection to your heart, that's the connection to your cells, that's the connection to that mind, body, and soul piece, because it's often the first inhibitor is the mindset, because of whatever reason, we have the ability, through our eyes, through our ears, even through our taste buds, with things like sugar and gluten, that it will deter you and distract you from the wealth of how you're supposed to feel on the inside. And we just have this common norm of being uncomfortable or feeling bloated or feeling dehydrated. And it's literally not just a food or a kitchen thing, it's a mental thing. And it's what's being given to us and fed to us visually through commercials, through the sound of the music and what people are talking about. And so to get quiet with yourself and to find that alignment piece of, okay, like distraction free and feeling like, feel hungry and realize what your body actually craves, it's not those things. It's not the gluten. It's not the sugar. Yet that's the first thing that we end up going to. And so I haven't gone through something in the same sense as what you have, but through my own mind, body, and soul journey, through my identity discovery, through whose I am, and discovering who I am in that, I really started to activate myself in the realm of what I was taking on in my body. And it has been transformative, even in just the way that I feel. And I used to sleep for 3 or 4 hour naps because I could. And now if I tried to sleep for 3 or 4 hours, which sometimes I would love to, I'm 20 minutes and I'm like, boom, and I have the most energy that I could possibly have, way less lethargic than I ever was after waking up from a 3 hour nap. And that's because of how I feel my body. It's like, okay, you don't need that. You get enough rest, and here's your little mental shutdown, which can also be done through meditation. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think too, it's like, the concept of like whatever you focus on grows. And even if we subconsciously focus on it, like, oh man, my back hurts. Gosh, my back hurts so bad. Man, my back just hurts. As opposed to the opposite of that. I was really grateful because when I was going through the hardest physical time of my life, I was on tour surrounded by people who were amazing, doing a job that I loved, having people meet me at the stage door asking for my autograph, like just so much, amazing things, going to these new cities and seeing new places. I don't know what it would have been like for me if I had been here in the city, quote unquote, pounding the pavement, trying to look for a job. And so I'm so grateful that God gave me the opportunity to have such a blessing while going through such a challenge, because of course I was focused on my skin because I looked at it every day, and I had people commenting on it. But the majority, like when I go back and I think about tour, I don't think about my skin. I think about all the beautiful things that happened. So it's truly, I think, what we focus on grows. Yeah. There was the last thing I'll say about that is, there was a really cool exercise that I've heard through Tony Robbins, and he says to look around the room and see everything that's green. Like, look at everything that's green, find everything that's green. Okay, see everything that's green, it's all green, and now close your eyes and think of everything that's red. And you can't think of anything that's red because the only thing you were looking for was green. And when you open your eyes, you then look for red, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much red.
Wow.
But it's truly just what you're focusing on.
Yeah, so. I love him. I think that's so good. Have you watched his Netflix?
Oh yeah. Watched it again last night, actually.
It's so good. I recently watched it a few months ago. It was pre-quarantine, when I was folding laundry, and my husband had the kids outside of the house, and I just completely broke down like a huge sobbing baby in so many different realms. And I felt like I'm on the other side of that. I'm like, wait, this is not for me. I was literally trying to learn like a teacher, not what he was saying, but how he taught. So I was looking at it from a different perspective, and then he got me, and I was like, oh wow, I'm receiving. And, I think it was such a God moment for me. And, he doesn't necessarily preach his faith by any means, but I think God can speak through so many different humans, so many different things, not even humans. And so it's just a matter of us receiving that, which is the same thing as how you're focusing. It's how you receive the things. What is, what's the saying? What is taught is caught. And so the things that you're being taught, and the mind, body, soul piece, the things that you're seeing, hearing, tasting, doing, and the people you're surrounding yourself with, those are subconsciously being integrated into you every single day. Even if you think you're stronger, eventually that is going to look a different way. So being really mindful of what we intake as human beings, and I've shared this before on the podcast, but being in control of the sound that comes in. What do I listen to? What podcasts am I turning on? What Audible book am I listening to? What music is coming into my frame? of mind, because even things like that are subconscious and you're like, oh, it's no big deal, it's just rap music or whatever, it can truly affect you.
Nowadays.
The news, that's a huge thing for now. I don't watch the news, so hence my lack of using it as an example. I can't do it. And so
no, me neither.
Really just being mindful of those things, because it truly can take root in a place that you don't want it to and cause pain in so many different ways, stress related.
I agree 100%.
Really cool. Jessica, I feel like we could keep talking for hours, and we will continue because I have to tell you all these business ideas I have in my brain. You guys, for those, I know it's so good. I always, when I share that with people, I never want to put them in the wrong direction, but I truly feel like God has gifted me that to give to people as an opportunity for their next stepping stone. So wherever you're being led, I believe where you are right now is really beautiful, and it has so much transformative power just in mind, body, and soul spaces, but your passion and your purpose. And so this was definitely a really amazing podcast, and I hope that it meets people. As a final question to cue it out, mind, body, and soul aside, what is the one thing that you would share as an activation piece for somebody to follow their dreams?
Meaning, what is something that they can do to take those steps,
or something that a saying that means a lot to you that keeps you going, any motivation factor?
I'll share 2 factors. One is kind of I started this group called Victories Group, and we meet once a month, and we talk about only the positivity in our life, only the things that have been victorious throughout the past month. And at the end of, we each get about 15 minutes to speak. And then at the end of our time, we lay yellow bricks, kind of like the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And so, we have to kind of lay our bricks to make our path and get to that Emerald City. And so what those yellow bricks are just, they're encouraged to be small steps, whether that's just making a phone call or sending an email or paying for that membership that you've been waiting to do or whatever it is. But it's just 3 yellow bricks that you are determined to accomplish by X number of time. And so you can lay your yellow bricks every morning. For that day, you could lay your yellow bricks for the month or for the year or whatever, but they're intended to be smaller, just small little steps that you can take. And that's been something this year that's really been helpful to me, because as I come up on our next meeting, I'll kind of go back and say what were my yellow bricks? And some of them I subconsciously did. I'm like, oh yeah, I got that done. But then other things I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet, so I better get that done. Cool. And then the other is just a little quote that my dad's always said to me, and that stuck with me. And it's just, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. And it's just all bringing in that mindset piece to really believing. And, it's something that's hard to do, especially in a performing career. But I think the other thing that's just coming to me is the fact that, in our lives, no matter what it is that we do, we all are multi-hyphenate in whatever ways that is. And I think embracing that has been one of the biggest lessons for me as an actor and as an artist, because I came to New York City wanting to perform on Broadway, but I've learned that if I can't say that success equals Broadway, because then that means if I have a baby, that's not success. If I have a commercial, that's not success. If I get on a TV show, that's not success, because I had this one main goal. So I think it's interesting to see how our journey takes us and where we're guided, and laying those yellow bricks and realizing that even those yellow bricks are little, successful things to
So
check
good.
off our list.
I love that so much. And I want to parallel it with something that I participate in with my group within a network, which you're, of course, invited to. I'll have to send you the link to it afterwards. And all of our listeners are. It is a space for movers and shakers and kingdom-minded passionistas to just share and thrive and grow alongside one another. And this tip specifically for the yellow brick concept is amazing. I hope that you share it within the group as well. But I do something similar, but with different words, and it's a bit of a mindset shift in the fact of it's called a fail forward party. And so every month we get together and we talk about failure points that became momentum points and how you can teach somebody through that without them having to actually experience it. And so to say, this happened in my personal life or this happened in my business life, and here's how I got past it, how you can get past it, and how it's now a win in my life. So for instance, psoriasis could be that fail forward. Like you went through this entire season and then you tried all of these things and now you're able to meditate and now you're able to have your baby, and now, that's going to be like a winning experience. That's going to be so many yellow bricks happened and were laid in order for you to get to that space of sharing the good news. And ultimately that's what a fail forward party is about. That's the yellow brick party. It's all about the good news. And that's, I think, already what you do on a consistent basis. Your aura totally just has that goodness, that sweetness of the Lord. And so I'm grateful to share it on the show today and excited to be in community with you.
This has been one of the best hours I've had since a few months. So I'm so grateful to spend it with you. And thank you so much for sharing.
Likewise, friend. Likewise. All right, y'all. See you later. Tune in next week.